Welcome to lesson 4 of our factoring unit. Today's lesson is going to focus on factoring trinomials, or expressions that have three terms, our basic standard form quadratic. This is one of the most important topics to get out of Algebra 1, so it's very, very important that you see me if you have any questions, because we are going to do a lot of practice with this to make sure that we have this factoring trinomial process down solid. So let's talk about it. The steps when you're factoring a trinomial are first to identify your a, b, and c values, complete your x box, break up the middle term, and then ultimately factor by grouping. So everything that we've been doing up to this point in the factoring unit is all going to come together here. So for the first example, I want to factor 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. First thing I need to do was our very first lesson, identifying a, b, and c. A is the coefficient in front of the x squared term, so in this case a is 3. B is the coefficient in front of the x term, so b is 10. And then c is your regular constant, the number by itself, in this case 8. So now we need those a, b, and c values to complete our x box. So this is when we played the x game. Now usually you had some numbers in the top and bottom. I'm going to tell you how to get those. So the number that you put in the top of your x is always going to be a times c. So that's why we identified those here. So in this case, a times c, or 3 times 8, gives us 24. And your bottom term is always going to be your b value, in this case, 10. So that's always what's going to go into your top and bottom spot. So now that I have those numbers, I want to find two numbers that will multiply to 24 and add to positive 10. So two numbers that multiply to positive 24 and add to positive 10 are positive 6 and positive 4. So there's our x box step. Next, we want to take those numbers, the 6 and the 4, and use that to break up my middle term. So instead of 3x squared plus 10x plus 8, we're going to expand the 10x into 6x and 4x, coming from these numbers from our x box. Now the reason why we expanded that is because now I have 4 terms, and we can go right back to factoring by grouping from our last lesson. So I group my first 2 terms together, my second 2 terms together. The GCF of the red group is 3x, and I'm left with x plus 2. The GCF of the blue group is 4, positive 4, and I'm left with x plus 2. So my GCF factor is 3x plus 4, and my leftovers are x plus 2. So there's my final answer for my factored form of this trinomial. Now I did kind of breeze through the steps in factoring by grouping because that was the last lesson, so please feel free to go back and rewatch the video if you need more clarification on that. Okay, looking at example 2, we want to factor 5x squared plus 14x minus 3. Step 1, identify a, b, and c. A is 5, b is 14, and c is negative 3. So make sure you're paying attention to the signs on these numbers as well. So now when I go to fill out the x box, a times c goes in the top. So I have 5 times negative 3, which gives me negative 15. And then my b value goes in the bottom, in this case 14. So now to play the x game, I want two numbers that will multiply to a negative 15, but add to a positive 14. So the two numbers that do that are positive 15 and negative 1. So now that I found the numbers that I need for my x box, I'm going to use those two, the 15 and negative 1, to break up my middle term. So that expands to 5x squared plus 15x minus 1x minus 3. So now I can go ahead and continue with factoring by grouping. So the GCF of the red group is 5x, and I'm left with x plus 3. The GCF of the blue group is negative 1, so I'm left with x plus 3. So my GCF factor is 5x minus 1, and my leftovers are x plus 3. There's my final factored form. Example 3, more practice with factoring trinomials, so we have this process down. I want to factor x squared minus x minus 12. So step 1, identify a, b, and c. A, the coefficient on my x squared term, there isn't one written, so it's assumed to be 1. B, make sure you're paying careful attention to the signs. It's going to be a -1. And then my c value, the number by itself, is -12. Step 2, complete your x box. The number in the top is going to be a times c. So 1 times -12 gives me -12. The number in the bottom of your x is just your b value, so -1. Now I need two numbers that will multiply to -12, but add to -1. So the two numbers that multiply to a -12 and add to -1 are going to be -4 and +3. So the -4 and +3 from my x box is what I use to break up the middle term and expand it to x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 12. So now I have 4 terms to factor by grouping. The GCF of the red group is x, and I'm left with x minus 4. The GCF of the blue group is 3, and I'm left with x minus 4. So x plus 3 and x minus 4 are the two factors of this trinomial. Okay, this is the last example I'm going to do in the video before you try 4 on your own. So again, we want to factor 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. Step 1, find your a, b, and c values. A is 3, b is 2, and c is -5. Now that I have a, b, and c, I want to complete my x box with a times c on the top, so -15, and my b value on the bottom, so 2. And I want two numbers that multiply to -15 and add to +2. That's going to be +5 and -3. They multiply to -15 and they add to +2. So +5 and -3 are the numbers I use to break up the middle into 3x squared plus 5x minus 3x minus 5. And then we go back to factoring by grouping. So the GCF of the red group is just an x, and I'm left with 3x plus 5. The GCF of the blue group, all I can take out is a -1, and I'm left with 3x plus 5. So my factored form is x minus 1 and 3x plus 5. So there's 4 examples that I walked you through. You have 4 examples to try on your own for your assignment. Please let me know if you have any questions, and check your email in Google Classroom if you want to join the Google Meet for extra help on Wednesdays.